Exposed, the sinister truth of the haunted girl who never aged. 13 years of terror in 1930s Russia. Annie couldn't shake the chill creeping down her spine as she clutched the tattered curtain, her heart pounding like a drum. Whispers rippled through the neighborhood, a tale of something unspeakable that lingered in the quiet town of Maplewood, a girl who went missing 13 years ago, and yet, she had never aged. Each night, Annie's children tossed and turned, their sleep riddled with nightmares of a shadowy figure with sunken eyes, reaching out with bony fingers. Was she just imagining things? The terror gripped her tight, igniting a flame of curiosity that burned away the remnants of her nerves. She poured another cup of coffee at the bustling diner, the smell of burnt Java mixing oddly with the sweet scent of pie cut fresh just moments ago. A murmur fell over the rugged men at the counter. They whispered about the haunted girl, their voices barely above a hush, filled with a frenzy that sent prickles of fear vibrating down Annie's arms. It was as if they sensed the dark weight of the truth hovering like a storm cloud just above their heads. Annie looked over at Tommy and Lily, both pale and restless. Just a flicker on the wall, she told herself, forcing a smile as dread washed over her. Yet every night, her children would wake, drenched in sweat, screaming for their lost father. With her husband vanished since the harrowing days of the Great Depression, Annie struggled to secure a life for them, oblivious to the reality closing in like a vice. Before we continue, a voice from the radio crackled, cutting through her thoughts. I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The sudden urge to confront the unknown propelled Annie forward. She began asking questions, approaching sunken-eyed neighbors who averted their gazes, clutching their warm beer cans, as if her inquiries might unravel their quiet lives. What really happened to the girl, she'd ask. The air around her bristled with tension, their words mere murmurs, their faces shuttered like closed doors. Her tenacity only stirred deeper fears within her. The more she probed, the more shadows crept into her home, cutting through the little peace they had left. Tommy's drawings haunted her, an unsettling spiral of darkness mixed with a resemblance of the lost girl, hair as black as the night, her eyes hollowed but fixed with the sadness of yesteryears. Annie could hardly breathe whenever she laid her eyes on the cryptic artwork hidden beneath pillows. With her heart on fire, every night at the diner, Annie felt that gaze, a presence lingering at the back of her mind. One evening, a gaunt figure slinked through the entrance. His hollow cheeks and too wide grin griped her heart with fingers of ice. He was one of the missing faces from the town and had ties to the girl's fate. The room stilled, as though the world held its breath, locking every frightened gaze upon him. Annie's instincts flared. Danger loomed as her pulse quickened. When the old neighbor opened his mouth, the scream that shattered the silence wasn't from the diner or even from the stranger, it pulsed from the deeper well of their shared memories. Annie's heart raced, dread rising in her throat. She was standing at the edge of an abyss, and her children were clinging to her, their wide eyes searching for hidden truths in the shadows. How much darker would this unknown passage lead them? What terrible revelation lingered just around the corner? It was becoming clear, this storm wasn't passing any time soon. They were all trapped, and something was awakening. Annie was paralyzed. The voices washed over her like a flood, a chaotic blend of whispers and anxious breaths. Everyone in the diner seemed to be holding their own fears in check, but the tension could be sliced with a knife. She turned to the gaunt figure, his unsettling grin widening like a predator's, and instinctively backed away, dragging her children along with her. "Mommy, what's happening?" Tommy's soft voice quivered, pressing closer to her side. Lily gripped his hand, her face a mask of terror. I don't know, sweethearts. But we need to leave," Annie murmured, her eyes darting around the room, the once bustling eatery now swallowing silence. They fleeted towards the door, but the stranger's voice cut through the stillness, as chilling as a winter's breath. "You're closer than you think," he spoke, his words slow and deliberate, each syllable echoing like church bells tolling at midnight. Annie felt her heart hammering against her ribs. How could he know? She stumbled outside, the cool night air washing over her like a welcome balm, but it did little to ease the burning panic inside. Tightly gripping Tommy and Lily's hands, she led them across the cracked pavement, shadows cast by the flickering streetlight dancing like ghosts. "Mommy, the girl, she was found, right?" Tommy's innocent question pierced her heart, chilled her blood. How could she explain the tangled web of lore that now surrounded them? As if summoned by his words, a cold breeze swept past, carrying with it the faint whispers of the lost girl, the voice twisted and eerie, buried in the rustle of leaves. Annie yanked her children closer, their faces pale against the dark. She pushed forward, wary of the encroaching whispers that threatened to engulf them. The town seemed alive, the buildings looming as if they were witnesses to her fear, each corner potentially hiding the tragic tale of the girl who haunted them all. She could almost feel the weight of unseen eyes trailing them as they hurried home, something alive lurking just beyond the veil of light. A creaking sound came from the back of the diner as they passed. Annie froze, her breath caught in her throat. Had she seen movement? Flickers of darkness seemed to pulse, twisting into shapes that made her stomach churn. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed. The notion of being watched gnawed at the edges of her sanity, and that when she heard it, a soft giggle, the kind that unnerved, echoing in the depths of her memory. The laughter of children, the lost girl's laughter. Annie whipped around, scanning the alleyway but finding nothing. The world around them felt wrong. The shadows twisted unnaturally, creeping closer as if they had a life of their own. "Keep moving," she urged, shivering against the cold and the terror. As they reached home, she fumbled with the door. Her heart raced, each beat a thunderous reminder of the darkness clawing at her mind. Once inside, the safety of four walls only felt half-constructed, flimsy against the secrets lurking outside. That night, as the pale moonlight infiltrated their small bedroom, drenched in shadows, the children fell asleep quickly. But Annie found no solace. She sat in the living room, soggy curtains drawn tight, feeling the presence of something just beyond her reach. And then there it was, a tapping. Soft, insistent, almost delicate at first. It came from the window, but she dared not look. Unease slithered through her body, her thoughts twisted, revealing horrors she only dared to conjure in the dark recesses of her mind. What if, just what if, it was the girl? What if she had been watching them all along? As she stood, a deafening silence engulfed the room. Every instinct told her to flee, yet her feet were glued to the spot. With trembling hands, she gathered the courage, inching toward the window to pull back the curtain. What awaited her beyond the glass would change everything. "Mommy?" Lily's frightened voice echoed from behind, sending a jolt through Annie's veins. Then came another tapping. Harder this time, and just. Outside, something was moving. What if they weren't alone anymore? Annie's heart plummeted into her stomach. The breath she had been holding escaped her in a shaky gasp. The tapping came again, louder, more insistent. It sounded like a child's hand against the cold glass, desperate and knowing. Her mind raced as she fumbled for the curtain, a warning bell ringing in the back of her head. "Mommy!" Lily's voice was still fragile, trembling as she clung to Tommy, eyes wide and bright with fear. It was too much for Annie. The urge to protect them overwhelmed her, igniting a spark of courage. "Stay close. I'll check," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. With a deep breath and her heart pounding beneath her ribs, she moved toward the window, the wooden floor creaking beneath her feet as if warning her to stop. Each step felt like plunging into darkness, the room thick with an oppressive atmosphere that coated her skin like a heavy fog. She reached the window, swallowed by a mixture of dread and urgency. As she pulled back the curtain, moonlight spilled into the room, illuminating her surroundings. Outside, the quiet street lay still and empty except for a figure standing just beyond the reach of light. A girl. Annie's pulse quickened. The child was small, clothed in a frayed white dress that hung from her thin frame like a whisper of a ghost. Long dark hair obscured her face, but Annie could feel the weight of the girl's eyes, pinning her in place, compelling her to step outside. "Help me," the child whispered, her voice smooth like silk yet chilling, curling around Annie like a snake. The word clung to the night air, drifting in and out like a distant echo. Annie stifled a gasp. What do you want?" Annie could barely form the words, her throat dry and scratchy, each syllable brittle with fear. "Mommy." Lily tugged at her sleeve, whimpering softly. Annie's instincts screamed for her to retreat, to pull her children into the safety of their home. And yet, a morbid curiosity unfurled, coaxing her closer to the window. "Help me, before she comes back," the girl cried. With every word, the shadows around her thickened, a dark living entity ready to ensnare them all. Annie's heart raced. Who comes back?" But the girl only stood there, silent, as if the answer was a trap set for any who dared to ask. The world outside felt profoundly alive. The wind howled through the trees, sending chills through Annie's bones, making her question the very fabric of her reality. "Mommy!" Tommy burst forth, hurrying to his mother. "We shouldn't." With a jolt, the girl's head snapped up, revealing features that twisted Annie's stomach into knots. Her face, pale and gaunt, bore the hallmarks of a tragic story, a story stamped with endless sorrow. The apparition smiled wide, the grin unsettling and haunting, a glimpse of torment smothered beneath a desperate plea for help. The room thickened with a palpable fear, a stillness hanging in the air like a guillotine ready to drop. "Please, she will take you too," the girl whispered, her voice now filled with urgency, depth layered underneath. Annie's chest tightened. "Who will take us?" In the suffocating silence that followed, a sound echoed from the darkness behind the girl, a low, guttural laugh. It sent a shudder down Annie's spine. The figure now stood silhouetted against the moonlight, hauntingly familiar. Lily's grip tightened around Tommy, her face pressed against him in dread. "Mommy, please." "I know, sweetheart. I know," Annie whispered back, feeling all hope tumble into a void. The girl outside waited, poised in the shadows, as the laughter grew louder, more menacing. With every passing second, the riddle deepened, binding them tighter in suspense. Annie sensed the unstoppable wave of terror crashing down upon them. "What if we can't escape?" she thought. What if they've already made their choice? But even as desperation clawed at her mind, Annie clung to the flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a way out. But would the girl help or hinder? Hesitating for just a heartbeat too long, the apparition faded into the shadow, the laughter lingering like smoke in the cold night air. Annie stepped back, heart racing, as her children looked to her with wide, questioning eyes. "Now what?" Tommy whispered, his voice small against the encroaching darkness. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the room felt colder, suffocatingly so. Then came a final knock, hard, decisive, and unmistakably final. The kind of knock that promised only one thing: they were not alone. What were they about to face? Annie's breath caught in her throat as she pulled her children close. The echo of that final knock reverberated through the walls, a stark reminder that whatever haunted them was now inside, lurking in the shadows. "Mommy, I'm scared," Lily whimpered, burying her face against Annie's side. Tommy glanced at the door, his eyes wide, fear etched across his young face. Annie felt her heart drum like a marching band, pounding against her ribcage. "It's okay, sweetheart. I'm here," she lied, even as unease slithered through her abdomen. She surveyed the room, searching for anything that resembled safety, but the walls seemed to close in, and the shadows grew thicker, alive with anticipation. Another knock. Louder this time, slapping against the wooden door with a demand that sent chills racing down her spine. The sound twisted in her mind, feeling like a dark whisper reversing the flow of time. Annie felt a pull, a luring familiarity that clawed at the back of her consciousness. "Should we call for help?" Tommy's voice shook, barely a whisper. What if it's no? We can't. Annie snapped, startling him. She softened her tone, forming a fragile bubble of reassurance. We stay quiet. Maybe it'll go away. Just then, the lights flickered again, the shadows dancing ominously, and the cold seeped deeper into her bones like icy fingers grasping at her heart. With every flicker, the laughter from outside returned, wrapping around the air, thick and suffocating, almost as if it were mocking her fear. Mommy, that girl. Lily's voice trembled, pinched and frail. She looked sad. What if she needs us? Annie bit her lip. The girl's eyes had carried a weight of sorrow, but that sorrow had twisted into something sinister. No, honey. We can't trust her. We have to stay inside. As she spoke, a soft rustle came from the corner of the room. Annie whipped around, bracing for whatever shadow dared to emerge. But nothing was there, just the furniture standing sentinel, the air thick and heavy, closing in around them. Mommy. Tommy's voice cracked, uncertainty lacing every syllable. Then, it happened. The door shuddered, rattled as if something were trying to break through. The sound felt alive, the wood stretching, bending under pressure, sweat beading on Annie's forehead as panic filtered through her veins. Go. Hide. She hissed urgently, ushering her children toward the closet, her heart racing against time. The children scrambled, pressing themselves into the cramped space. Annie shoved them in, overwhelming fear dissipating any patience she normally held. She fell silent, pulling the door shut, trapping their breaths in the darkness. The door splintered against the next blow, but it didn't give. The laughter morphed from a taunting whisper to a roar, a dark, spiraling scream that raced along the edges of her mind. Annie pressed her ear against the closet door, desperate to hear the next movement, each second stretching into eternity. Mommy. Lily whispered, her small voice cracking, each syllable carrying dread. Annie dared a glance at the sliver of light that slipped beneath the closet door. From her vantage point, she caught sight of a shadow that danced across the threshold, a figure, seamlessly slipping in and out between reality and nightmare. Annie's breath hitched. She strained to listen, to parse the sounds echoing in the darkness, but they twisted together, weaving a tapestry of dread. The laughter faded, replaced by a low murmur, words melding into a singular threat that sent ice cascading down her spine. Suddenly, the figure lurched, slamming something heavy against the door, the noise almost deafening. Annie's pulse thundered in her ears. Mommy, what is happening? Tommy whimpered, clinging to his sister. Shoo. Just stay quiet. But the noise continued, the door bucking like a wild stallion, splinters raining down like the promise of ruin. Then came a final, desperate cry, a soul-chilling wail that felt like it pierced through time itself. Annie's heart twisted. The plea echoed in her ears, help me. It wasn't the girl outside, but it sounded all too familiar. Before she could process it, a shadow darted toward the window where moonlight poured in, illuminating the girl's form once more. A shimmer of desperation crossed her corkscrew grin, melting into a scream of anguish that clawed for Annie's very soul. In that moment, everything froze. The room felt charged, filled with a presence that demanded recognition, a presence that knew their names. Annie's breath quickened, her mind racing with thoughts dark and terrifying. What was coming next? Could they escape? Or would they fall victim to that darkness? Tommy's grip tightened around his sister, and Annie realized with a horrific clarity that this nightmare was only beginning. And she had to uncover the truth fast, before it unfolded into something far worse. What would she do when the door fell, and all their fears stepped inside? The closet felt tighter with each fleeting second, the air thick with their collective fear. The creaking of the door sent splinters of panic racing up Annie's spine. It was undeniable now, whatever it was that haunted them was determined to get in. She held her breath, flicking her eyes between the darkened sliver of the closet door and her children, who huddled close, faces pale and wide with terror. The laughter faded into haunting whispers, swirling in the corners of her mind. Annie strained to understand the words, throaty and distorted. A voice broke through, clearer than the others. "Let me in." It sounded like the girl, but shriller, more desperate. "Tommy, Lily," Annie said softly, fighting to keep her voice steady. "You stay still. Don't make a sound." Her eyes darted to the door, pulses of dread thrumming through her. The shadows inside the room twisted and writhed, as if they too were alive and hungry. Another crash against the door rocked the closet. This time, it jarred Annie into movement. She pressed her forehead against the wood, praying her heart wouldn't escape her chest. Why wouldn't it just go away? She thought fiercely, desperation clawing at her. Then, suddenly, it was quiet. Silence wrapped around them like a suffocating shroud. Annie could hear the low, shaken breathing of her children, mixing with her own quickened breaths. Each second stretched painfully, and dread coiled tightly in her gut. She leaned closer to the door, attempting to catch any sound, but her ears strained against the weight of that encompassing silence. Lily squeezed her hand, her small fingers trembling. "Mommy, I don't like this," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "Me too, honey," Annie murmured, her heart aching at the sorrow in her daughter's voice. The stillness persisted, stretching into unbearable lengths of uncertainty. Had whatever was out there lost interest? Or was it merely gathering its strength for another assault? Then the crack of laughter erupted again, loud and sinister, slicing through the quiet. Annie flinched, pressing her palms tightly against her ears. Shadows piled on top of one another, a thick, choking fog garnering around the closet. The door itself seemed to pulse, alive in its resistance. "Mommy! It's coming!" Tommy gasped, pointing toward the door in a panic. Every primal instinct warned her not to look, but she couldn't resist. The wood buckled under another strike. Then it stilled. Annie's heart raced as she leaned closer. "What do you want?" she shouted, her voice breaking, tinged with defiance. A pause, heavy and deliberate. "Fear," came the low whisper, reverberating through the keyhole. With every ounce of courage, Annie summoned her voice. "You won't take us. We're stronger than you." The proclamation felt frail even as it exited her lips. With those words hung in the air, the figure outside sighed. It swelled closer, pressing against the wood, the pressure reflecting desperation far beyond that of her own. Annie readied herself for whatever would come next, her breath shallow, her body rigid as she wondered if her words held any power at all. Then came a muffled sound, a shift in the world outside her safe cocoon. The whispers rose, chanting her name, morphing, as the shadows coalesced into a shape, something dark and terrible stepping fully into view. It hovered near, just beyond the door, and Annie's stomach twisted at the realization. It was her name they sang, the darkness seeking to pull her into its chorus of horror. "Annie," they sang sweetly, as if it were a lullaby. "You can join us." A terrifying thought sparked in her mind, knotting her stomach with dread. What if it was trying to lure her? What if it was the same thing that had taken so many before? As the door splintered again, she closed her eyes, a final, desperate plea bubbling forth. "Please, I need to protect my children." But her voice dissolved into the chaos, lost to the encroaching shadows. The closet felt alive with an energy that pulsed against her skin, a perverse excitement swirling in the air, heavy and sticky. Frantic scratching began at the door, tearing at the wood. She could hear the vocals transforming into a brutal chorus that echoed in her skull. And then silence descended once more. That silence was immediately shattered as the door crashed in, flooding the closet with jagged, flickering light. "Mommy, help!" Tommy cried, launching himself towards the opening. Annie's heart raced as she reached out, but in that heartbeat, what lunged through the door was not merely shadows. It was a truth waiting to be uncovered. What was it really after? And could they escape before it consumed them all? The door splintered, crashing inward, and for a split second, everything froze. The air hummed, thick with tension, as the light poured into the cramped space. Annie's heart dropped. What stepped into their sanctuary was not just darkness, but an ethereal figure, a girl draped in a tattered white dress, hair hanging like serpents over her face, sunken eyes gleaming with a hunger that made Annie's blood run cold. "Mommy, please." Tommy's voice broke through the shock, but the girl's icy gaze turned towards him, her expression twisting into something sinister. "Join us, Annie." The girl's voice dripped like honey, sweet with a sharp edge, each syllable coiling around Annie's mind. Annie's instincts screamed as she pressed herself against the back of the closet, cradling her children close. They trembled together, a tight knot of pure terror. "Stay behind me," she whispered, although inside, her resolve was crumbling. The girl stepped forward, the glow from the room creeping around her figure, revealing the grotesque edges of her visage. "You can't protect them from what I bring. Scream as loud as you like, it doesn't matter." Tommy pulled at Annie's sleeve, eyes wide. "Mommy, it's not real. It can't be real." Annie could feel her chest tightening. "Focus, Tommy," she hissed, but her words felt faint against the whirling darkness around them. "Everyone you love is part of this now," the girl intoned, a slow smile spreading across her face revealing teeth too sharp, too many. "They're all waiting, they're all hungry." The shadows in the corners of the room twitched, teasing at the edges of Annie's vision. Memories assaulted her, images of her own childhood, a bedroom similar to this one, laughter that echoed until it turned into cries. "Let them go," she shouted, her voice wavering. It was a plea, a gamble, a search for strength that felt so far away. "And no," Lily whimpered, clutching her brother tight, her small fingers trembling. With a sudden surge of courage, Annie stepped toward the shadowy figure. "You won't take my children." Her voice grew fiercer as she reached into the depths of her fear. "I reject what you offer." The girl froze, her eyes narrowing. The shadows surged forward, crashing against the walls, swirling like smoke around them. "You think you can escape?" she crooned, her voice now a throaty mockery. Outside, darkness gathered in heavy waves, the laughter rising into a cacophony that rattled the very foundation of the house. The more Annie defied, the more furious the shadows became, swirling around her feet, trying to drag her down. "You cannot fight it, you need to accept your fear." "Mommy!" Tommy screamed, and Annie felt the tug of desperation rip at her heart. Was this it? Would she watch as the darkness swallowed her children whole? Rage ignited within her, flames of defiance burning through the suffocating fear. "No. You will not take us," she thundered, but uncertainty clawed at her resolve. With every ounce of strength, she lunged forward, reaching for her children, ready to take them into the light that flickered with hope. But the shadows fought against her, surging, pulling, tearing at the very fabric of their being. Then Lily cried out, her voice piercing the chaos. "Mommy, I want to let go." In that moment, something shifted. The girl faltered, and doubt broke through her wicked smile. "You think love can protect you? You're all so naive." Driven by an instinct deeper than fear, Annie pushed back against the darkness, gathering both her children close. Thunderous laughter echoed as she felt the rush of swirling energy against her, like a storm battling in the night. Her heart raced as she repeated the mantra, louder now, through the chaos of despair. "Love is stronger than fear. I will protect them." As those words hung in the air, the girl shrieked, a wretched sound that frayed the fabric of time itself, making the world tremble around them. In that moment, something began to crack. The shadows, the laughter, everything around them, started to fracture. But could love truly be a weapon against the deeply rooted terror? Or was it just another measure of her own desperation? Outside the boundaries of the closet, the growl of something forceful awaited, a monstrous truth lurking in the shadows. Would they survive the night, or would the malicious truth swallow them whole? Annie's defiance rang out, a shot fired into the swirling chaos. The girl recoiled slightly, her sharp features casting a warped shadow on the walls. The darkness quivered, caught in the balance between despair and hope. "Don't let go of each other," Annie urged, her voice a desperate whisper as she pulled Tommy and Lily tightly against her. The weight of her children felt both like a shield and a burden, pressing against her chest. Suddenly, the girl's laughter echoed again, mingling with a chorus of haunting whispers that clawed at Annie's sanity. It was as if the walls themselves were closing in, constricting around them like a serpent's grip. "They're here. They are waiting," the girl hissed, her lips curling into a wicked grin, revealing even more jagged teeth. Annie scanned the room for an escape. The windows seemed impossibly far, the door was obliterated, and the closet offered no solace. Outside, shapes stirred, slithering among the shadows. She could almost hear the whispers of long-gone souls, their pleas lost to the night. Was this what awaited them? "Mommy," Tommy whimpered, his small voice breaking through her frantic thoughts. "What is happening? Hold on to me. Just hold on." The shadows coiled around their feet like living tendrils, creeping up to her knees. Annie fought against them, willing her body to move. Every instinct screamed retreat, yet she stood her ground, the flickering embers of hope ignited by her children's frightened faces. "Love is stronger than fear," she repeated, louder, each word a lifebuoy tossed into an ocean of darkness. But the girl's laughter twisted her mantra into mockery, echoing through the void as if it were a joke. "Naive. That is but a mortal belief." The air seemed charged, electric, with an otherworldly presence. Annie felt the shadows pull harder, trying to unravel her, to strip away the love she clung to so desperately. What if the darkness was right? What if love couldn't save them? Images flashed before her eyes, her own mother's face, warped by grief and despair, how she had clung to her children when all hope had faded. Would history repeat itself? "Please!" Annie shouted, her voice cracking under the weight of fear. "I won't give you anything. We will not join you." The girl's eyes widened momentarily, surprise flickering across her grotesque features. She hissed angrily, and the shadows writhed more violently, thrumming with dark energy, almost alive. "Would you watch them suffer rather than surrender?" she taunted, a knife-edged question cutting through the air. Lily's grip tightened around her brother, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm scared, Mommy." "Mommy," Tommy echoed, their voices small against the growing storm. Annie's heart shattered at their fear. The serpent's grip tightened, but she fought against it. "You are my world," she declared, her tone fierce and protective. "No darkness can take you from me." With a final surge of determination, she stepped back into the shadows. In that instant, the air exploded. Light burst forth from her heart, illuminating the blackness, piercing the veil that surrounded them. The girl screeched, her form breaking apart as the light clashed with the darkness, revealing glimpses of a path ahead, but before they could move, the ground shuddered violently, shaking as malevolent voices rose like a tidal wave, drowning out her thoughts. "She cannot protect you." Annie felt herself being drawn back, the shadows swirling around her, and for a dreadful moment, she caught sight of ghostly faces, her family, friends lost, clawing at her in a maddening frenzy. "Run!" she yelled, shoving her children. "Go! I'll follow." Just as the shadows threatened to consume her fully, something solid slammed against her. A glimmer of familiarity tempered merely by the fear of the unknown. "Mommy!" Tommy shouted, voice cracking with worry and disbelief that it felt like they were on the precipice of something unimaginable. The shadows whispered secrets, their voices rising above Annie's resolve. What if this was never an ending, only a new beginning of horrors unfolding? With a deep breath, Annie knew they needed to make their choice, but choices were never easy in the dark. Would love be their guiding light, or would it ignite the darkness further? As they reared back, ready to plunge into the unknown, the laughter of the girl rang out, triumphant and echoing, sending chills tumbling down Annie's spine. What awaited them on the other side of this shadowy abyss? The ground melted beneath Annie's feet as the shadows whipped around her like a tempest. Screams and laughter warred in her mind, a twisted symphony drawing closer, each note sharper than the last. For an instant, the light she had unleashed flickered, and the darkness pressed in again, lustful and greedy. "Mommy, please!" Tommy's voice quivered, a thread of panic weaving through the air. Annie's heart raced. She felt the grip of desolation encircling her, but she couldn't falter. The corridor ahead was cloaked in chaos. "Run!" she urged again, forcing her children toward the bittersweet illumination in the distance. The path twisted like a serpent, and every step sent tremors blasting through the ground beneath them. The air felt thick, almost alive, as if an unseen force breathed down their necks. "What about you?" Lily cried, her tiny fists clutching Annie's shirt. "I'll be right behind you. Just go." The lie slipped from her lips, but it tasted bitter. The shadows quivered in anticipation, ready to pounce. With heavy, trembling legs, the children sprinted ahead, leaving their mother in a tangle of fear and determination. Annie felt every step pulling her deeper into the abyss. The girl's laughter turned into a wailing shriek, rising like a crescendo of a horror film climax. "You think you can run from me?" it echoed, wrapping around her like a noose. Annie wouldn't let it take her. Instinct propelled her to chase after her children, but the shadows clutched at her ankles, dragging her down. She dug her heels in, gritting her teeth, forcing herself to break free. "Tommy! Lily!" she shouted into the chaos, but the shadows drowned her out. They twisted around her like serpents, caressing her in their darkness, whispering promises of surrender. "Join us, it's easier," but Annie couldn't give in. Not when every moment without them stretched and warped time itself. The laughter morphed into something more sinister, a cacophony laced with malice. In scattered fragments, she caught glimpses of the corridor's true form. Paint peeled from the walls, what had once been vibrant now faded into an inky void. Flickering bulbs above cast eerie shadows, further distorting the world around her. A ghastly carnival scene gone wrong. Suddenly, the shadowy girl appeared just before Annie. She whirled, a whirlwind of dark energy and glee. "You think they'll save you?" she hissed, stepping forward. "They are lost just like you." Annie recoiled, her breath catching. Desperation clawed at her chest. "No. They won't be." Mirroring each beat of her heart, the darkness pulsed as if testing her resolve. In that moment, the ground shuddered again, splitting and cracking like thunder. "Mommy! Help!" The agony in Tommy's cry shook her to the core. Annie looked in the direction of the sound, her pulse racing. She spun, every fear mounting inside her as she fought against the shadows gripping her soul. Yanking her knees high, she barreled toward where she last saw them. Tears streamed down her face, her throat scratched raw from shouting. Then everything shifted. As if the walls had ears, the laughter echoed with unholy delight. "What's the matter? Leaving so soon?" Annie's heart thudded, drowning her thoughts in panic. The whispers grew louder, teasing, taunting her resolve. "They belong to us now." The corridor spun, turning her world upside down. In a desperate lunge, she reached for her children, but her hand passed through empty air. Fear clutched at her throat. Panic thrashed within her. "Where are they?" The question left her lips like a prayer. With a sickening jolt, the shadows released their grip, and she was thrust into a cavernous pit of darkness, where even the screams of her children faded to nothing. For what felt like hours, she stumbled, searching, adrenaline driving her forward, and then, in the midst of the void, a pale glow emerged, at first faint, then growing brighter. Trembling, Annie moved toward it. Could it be the light of salvation? But as she approached, what loomed within struck her with dread: a mirror. Her reflections swirled within it, morphing into grotesque versions of herself, teeth bared, hollow eyes filled with hunger. One of us," they whispered. The surface rippled violently, distorting the vision, and Annie's heart sank. She tore her gaze from the mirror, knowing she wouldn't let it deceive her. But then, that laughter returned, now echoing from behind her. "You want them back. You have to pay the price." Fear twisted in her stomach at the implication. What price? As darkness surged, threatening to pull her in once more, Annie stole a final glance at the glowing mirror. There, her children were trapped, their faces frozen in terror, their cries echoing in the dark. Mommy. Annie gritted her teeth, fury igniting within her. She would not rest until she had them back no matter the cost. Charging toward the mirror with reckless abandon, she prepared to confront whatever lay beyond, determined to face the truth. And just as she touched the surface, it felt alive, pulsing with a heartbeat that matched her own, cold and desperate. What sacrifice awaited her, and would it be enough to save her children from the shadows? Annie's fingers grazed the mirror's surface, sending ripples through the chilling air. The heartbeat throbbed, as if it recognized her. For a moment, she hesitated, anxiety tightening around her chest like a vice. What was this dark sorcery? What type of bargain awaited her? The swirling images shifted again, morphing into scenes of her children, playful in a sunlit field. Laughter and light so innocent, so blissful. Annie's heart ached at the sight, but the joy was snatched away, replaced by spectral reflections, a warning: we'll take what you cherish unless you surrender. No. She screamed, her voice rising above the laughs and whispers. She pressed her forehead against the glass, her breath fogging the surface. You can't have them. You'll never take my children. Then pay the price. The shadows hissed, wrapping around her, their cold fingers grazing her skin like a sickening caress. Annie's resolve wavered, but she couldn't let fear win. If she had to make a choice, she would. A mother's love could fuel her against the most diabolical of odds. She drew a deep breath, willing herself to believe that the light would overcome the darkness. What do you want? She asked, her voice low, steadier. What sacrifice must I make? Your essence, your light. Everything that gives you strength, every atom of hope, it replied, the voice taunting, flickering around her like flames consuming dry wood. In return, we will free them. Annie's heart pulsed in disbelief, terror rising like bile in her throat. It felt like choice morphed into a trap, each option drenched in despair. Still, she couldn't show weakness. Not now. Not ever again. Take it. She shouted, rage surging through her veins. Take it all. Just set them free. The world shifted with a sickening lurch. Light and darkness combined, wrapping around her like a shroud, squeezing tighter and tighter. Laughter shrieked, wild and manic, echoing and reverberating through the abyss. Annie staggered, feeling her essence bleed away, warmth deserting her like a lover pushed to the side. With each breath, her strength waned, shadows danced around her, clawing at her skin, echoing her fading resolve. Submission beckoned, whispering insidiously, urging her to relinquish everything. The grip of the mirror tightened around her hand, pulling, but Annie fought. You can't have me. You can't have them. Just then, the shrill wail of her children cut through the chaos, dragging her back from the brink of surrender. Mommy! Help us! Annie blinked hard. The image of her children, their innocence flickering in despair, ignited the ember of defiance within her once more. No! I want to let you win. Raising her other hand, she slammed it against the mirror, feeling a surge of light pulse within her. With a roar, she thrust herself through the barrier, determined to rescue her children even if it meant tearing through the darkness itself. The cold engulfed her and then everything exploded. Annie crashed through. Light blinded her, pain perforated her body. She gasped for air, raw and raspy, suddenly pulled into a room that crackled with energy as shadows writhed in all corners. The air was electric, heavy with tension and apprehension, and a paralyzing silence cloaked everything. Directly ahead, she saw them, Tommy and Lily, eyes wide and brimming with terror, trapped at the heart of a swirling vortex of darkness. Mommy! They cried, reaching for her, desperate. Annie's heart soared, pounding against her ribcage, but the shadows roared with defiance, spiraling faster, trying to pull her back. You think you can save them? You are just a flicker in the void. No! She screamed, trying to steady herself against the blinding chaos. I am their mother. I refuse to give in. Lily's small fingers stretched toward her as their voices intertwined with the torment of curses and laughter swirling around them, bathing Annie in a grotesque symphony of despair. With every bit of determination left, she bolted forward, powered by the desperate need to save her children. The shadows fought back, grasping at her, clawing for her. They shrieked, their voices peppering her mind with doubts and fears, but she wouldn't stop. Just a little closer, would the light be enough to reclaim them? Or would they all be swallowed whole, lost forever to the madness? Annie lunged, reaching for her children as the darkness roared around them. Would they escape the nightmare? The shadows wriggled, and the laughter returned, a chilling echo rife with malice. Welcome to your reckoning. Annie's heart raced as she barreled into the swirling shadows, desperate to reach her children. Fear clawed at her mind, but love blazed like a beacon through the darkness. "Mommy's coming!" she cried, her voice carrying strength even she didn't feel. The shadows writhed around her like serpents, slashing at her skin while icy tendrils sought to drag her back into the abyss. "You think you can fight us?" they whispered, voices sharp as daggers. "You're nothing but a flicker, an insignificant light in our realm." But with every ounce of willpower, Annie pushed against the crushing despair. "I will not let you take them." She lunged forward, hand outstretched towards the swirling mass of darkness that clung to Tommy and Lily. The more she focused on their tear-streaked faces, the brighter her resolve shone. "I am their mother, and I won't let fear win." The shadows pulsed, recoiling slightly from her fervor. The vortex began to shudder, as if caught in a tempest of struggle. "You cannot save what you cannot control." The guttural laughter echoed, dark and vicious, filling every crack of her determination with doubt. But she didn't flinch. She could see the glistening of tears in her children's eyes, their innocence trapped but not lost. "Hold on, you two. Just hold on." Annie felt the ground beneath her trembling, the world itself waiting with bated breath for the outcome of this battle. Taking a deep breath, she dove further into the maelstrom. "Light is more powerful than you know." With those words, she drew on the warmth of every loving moment she and her children had shared. It was there, their laughter, their hugs, even the small silences shared between breaths. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted from within her. The shadows shrieked in horror, recoiling from the brilliance of her love. "You are nothing!" Annie bellowed, the radiant energy pushing back against the darkness. "Mommy! Please!" Tommy cried, reaching for her. His small hand barely brushed her fingers, but it was enough. She lunged harder, feeding on their hope, their bond. As the light surged outward with a deafening roar, the darkness stumbled, its force weakening against the bright tides of Annie's unyielding love. "No!" it shrieked, darkness spilling and fluttering like ash under the force of an unseen wind. Yet, even as it fought, Annie could feel the shadows weakening. With a fierce cry, she reached into the shadows, grabbing hold of Tommy and Lily. Their warm bodies surged back to her, solid and real, drawing her into the core of the light. The shadows disintegrated around them, their whispers fading like echoes in a long-abandoned hall. As they emerged from the chaos, a brilliant light enveloped them, blinding future horrors with incandescent warmth. The world around them reshaped itself, solidifying into familiar surroundings back home, in the cozy safety of their living room. Breathless, Annie clutched her children tightly, their laughter spilling into the air as they realized they were safe. "We're home. We're really home!" Tommy shouted, pure joy lighting up his face. Lily's tiny hands wrapped around her, squeezing with all the love in her small heart. "You did it, Mommy. You saved us." Annie felt their warmth seep into her being, the reality of safety washing over her like a wave. The darkness felt so far away, like it had never really existed at all. As she sank to the floor, her heart full and exhausted, the shadows slipped away, retreating forever into the void from whence they came. It was done. The truth had emerged, and with it, freedom. "There will be no more terror," Annie whispered, holding her children close, vowing to shield them from darkness. Tonight had taught her something monumental: the incredible power of love could conquer overwhelming fear. And as the moonlight dimmed through the window, the whispers faded into silence. She silently celebrated the evening transition, one where her family had not only survived the nightmare but had found light in the darkest of corners. They would move forward together brighter, stronger, and united in love. But whispers of other stories linger like echoes in their home, and a flicker of something deeper remained. She could feel a tether of unfinished tales still weaving among the stars. If they could escape this dark web, what awaited them next? You need to subscribe now. It's the moment to show your support and stay in tune with more exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to help us reach even more people. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this amazing conclusion.